Time is running out. Here in the United States on September 30th, the federal tax credit if you are in the market for an EV is going away, meaning $7,500 might be added back on to the price you were expecting to pay if you were to buy right now. And that's gotten a bunch of us thinking, myself included, is this the time to pull the trigger? Is this the time to buy? And if you're in the market for a car that qualifies for this rebate, of course, the two most likely options are the Tesla Model 3 and the Tesla Model Y. And when you compare these together, now that they have both been updated, well, the decision sometimes can be a little harder than you might expect, especially now with these updated models. They're more different than they've been in the past. Now, a bit of a history lesson here. Back in 2017, the original Model 3 was released. And well, this shook up the industry, especially for Tesla, because this was a relatively affordable but very good car, an EV that many people were waiting for. But similar to what they did with the Model S and the Model X, where they started with the Model S and then kind of built upon that for the SUV version with the Model X, they did the exact same thing with the Tesla Model Y. But even more so, I feel, the Tesla Model 3 and the Tesla Model Y for the longest time were nearly identical. There was only a few key differences between them, and so that made choosing between them a little bit more difficult in certain ways. In some ways, maybe easier, but in some ways, a little bit more difficult. But then last year, Tesla did their Highland refresh for the Model 3, which made it a big difference in terms of styling and overall comfort and just fit and finish. They did a really good job there. And so that made choosing between that Model 3 and the old Model Y a bit more difficult. But now we are where we are today with the Juniper Model Y that just got released. And so now we kind of have both new models on the market. This is what they're going to be. We don't really expect very many big changes. But if this was the type of car you were considering getting, well, now is a great time to buy, because you can still possibly get that federal incentive if you qualify, but you know that the car is, updated. You're not expecting anything different. Now, when looking at both of these models, I think there's three main things to consider, especially right now, today. Some of this might change in the future, but right now, three main things that set these cars apart from each other. Interestingly, one of the big ones is the design. That is not something that was all that true in the past. Like, yes, there were slight differences between the Model 3 and the Model Y, but you can very much tell that they were brothers. The headlights look very similar. The taillights look nearly identical. The only difference was kind of the size and general shape, but they were very similar. Whereas today, if you put them next to each other, they're actually very different. In fact, you might not realize that these are the same basic platform because of how different Tesla has made them. Speaking personally, that's something I enjoy. I like that differentiation, so you really know which car you are looking at, and it kind of gives each vehicle a bit more of a identity or a personality, whereas you might not be able to notice that initially up front at first. And Tesla themselves are kind of leaning into this difference as well. If you go onto their website, now you can see that the Model Y is considered their mid-size SUV, but then the Model 3 is their sports sedan. So those are two different philosophies of what these cars are. The Model Y is very much the everyman's car, whereas the Model 3 is positioned as a fun car, something that is enjoyable to drive. And of course, you have the visual differences here as well. So you've got the light bar up front on the Model Y and the light bar on the back, whereas the Model 3 has much more of a Tesla Model S look. So it's got the, typical headlights and tail lights that you would expect. Now, there is a question of why Tesla went this direction. Why didn't they do that with the Model 3? You could say the Cybercab had something to do with this, especially as they start to launch their robotaxi service. That having the Model Y kind of fit in with that fleet a bit better makes some sense. If they're going to be launching a bunch of Model Ys, it makes sense to kind of make them fit in with the general Cybercab aesthetic. I don't know, that's just a guess on my end, but it makes sense why they would do that. But yeah, I mean, even though these are still very similar cars underneath from a first glance, and when you're looking at the cars design-wise, they are quite different these days, which I actually think is a good thing. Now, on the interior, it's a little bit of a different story. There are some differences, the major one being that on the Model Y, you have a turn signal stock that is physical, that you can flip like you are used to. Whereas on the Model 3, that is still all controlled on the steering wheel with buttons. Now, having used both, obviously, if you're used to using a stock, it's just easy to transition to that. But also, if you drive a car that has the buttons for any period of time, you get used to it extremely quickly. So I don't know that it's exactly a deal breaker either way, but something to consider. Clearly people were asking for that, so Tesla brought that back with the Model Y. But on the interior, in terms of design, that's really the main difference. Other than that, it really comes down to space. Of course, the Model Y is an SUV, so it's giving you more interior room. You got the hatch on the back, so it's easier for storage. I mean, on the interior, both are basically the same, except for the size. So that really is a big consideration between the two, whether or not you need that size. Real quick though, before I continue, I want to tell you about this video's sponsor, Kinsta. Kinsta is the #1 provider of managed hosting for your WordPress site. And they give you a ton of features and options that just make using them that much better. They give you 24/7 support. They can migrate your site over for you. And Kinsta is trusted by over 120,000 different companies, and these are companies you've actually heard of. And they were rated #1 in WordPress hosting by G2. And they actually outranked 357 other companies to get that title. So they're no joke. And well, they get to the top for a reason, because they actually deliver on what they claim. If you use them, you can get up to 200% faster performance on your site, and you get great security like enterprise level firewall and an SLA-backed uptime guarantee of up to 99.9%. So if you use Kinsta, well, you're gonna have a site that works, is secure, and not only that, is easy to manage. Because like I mentioned, they have 24/7 live support. So this is a real person that you can actually talk to and get your problems diagnosed and solved quickly. So if you want to check this out or learn more for yourself, I'll leave a link down below, or you can use this QR code on screen. With this, you can get your first month free. And if you decide to keep going, you can get a 30-day money back guarantee. And all you have to do is check out the link and try it for yourself. Now, the second big thing to consider is price. Honestly, the difference in price is not that huge when you're comparing the Model 3 and the Model Y. For the Model 3, the most affordable option right now is a long-range battery with the rear-wheel drive motor, and that starts at $42,490. Whereas with the Model Y, you get basically the same configuration, so it's a long-range rear-wheel drive model that starts at $44,990. It's not a huge difference, just a couple of thousands of dollars, but something to consider. You could put that money towards, maybe a paint option, an interior color, or you can even put it towards full self-driving if you want. Now, the third thing to consider is which model exactly are you looking to get? Because right now, there actually is a pretty major difference there. Now, like I said just a moment ago, if you're looking at the base model between both of these cars, they're both available, they're both relatively similar, so not really talking about that. What I am talking about though is the performance model. Because well, the Model 3 performance exists, but the Model Y performance, well, it doesn't. It's not out just yet. And so if that is what you are in the market for, if you are wanting the performance version of these cars, as of right now, well, the Model 3 Performance is your only option. And I gotta say, if you're looking for a performance car, the Model 3 Performance is incredible. It is an excellent value. It is excellent performing. I absolutely love this car, and every time I consider which EV to get next, it is at the top of the list. It is a hard thing to beat. But we've also started to get leaks and rumors of the Model Y Performance. We've seen some spy shots that it does exist and it is coming. It's not really a surprise, but we're finally starting to see it. And now the question is, when is it actually going to get released? And because the federal incentive is going away in September 30th, the question is this going to qualify for that? And if theoretically it could qualify for the federal incentive, maybe Tesla would want to release this as soon as possible so that they still have some time with that federal credit available. And hopefully they would be able to sell more cars because of that. But then there's the flip side of that, maybe it wouldn't have qualified anyway, so who cares? And then we might see it get released later down, in the fall. That is still all developing, but if we kind of go with the track record of the Model 3, we're getting close to when we should see the Model Y Performance. The Model 3 Highland was first announced without the performance variant. Then a few months later, we got the performance version, and we're kind of in this similar timeline right now with the Model Y. Now, along with that, there are two other models that just got announced over in China, the Model Y L and the Model 3 Plus. These are variants of the cars we have here in the US, and according to rumors, we should be getting those here as well. There's no timeline on that, but the Model Y L is a longer, larger version of the Model Y that has more seats. And it should also have a more luxurious interior and just be a more upgraded version of the Model Y we have. And the Model 3 Plus has a larger battery, which means you can go much further on a charge. Personally, I'm in this situation here where the performance variance is the one I am looking for. So for me, that's what makes it tough to pull the trigger right now, knowing that the Model Y performance is coming relatively soon. That is something I want to wait and see. But then you have the federal incentive that I could apply to a Model 3 or Y right now. It's a bit difficult to decide. Now, having driven both of these cars, I have to say that whichever one you choose, you are probably going to love it. They both drive extremely well. Not only that, they drive noticeably better than their previous generation counterparts. Tesla really did a great job, not only with drive quality, but overall build quality and performance. I think they just hit it out of the park here. The biggest thing I noticed in both cars is the suspension. They are more supple, they are easier to drive, they are just more comfortable. For the Model Y, that was a big complaint that many people had with the first generation. The ride quality is not the best, but they really did seem to adjust that and I think make it significantly better. And of course, with the redesign, I think the exteriors on both cars look pretty decent, but I do think the Model 3 I think it looks really, really good and it is aging even better. But the interior, I think, is also where Tesla really hit it out of the park. It gave us a ton of creature comforts like the cooled seats, the interior ambient lighting, all of that really does make the car feel elevated from the previous generations. And so from my perspective, as someone who has used both of these cars pretty extensively, if you choose one or the other, I don't know that it's gonna matter all that much. You really just have to decide, a few things like how much do I care about having more space, or do I like the design of one car over the other, or do I really care about those couple $1,000s that I might save or end up spending depending on which car. Once you make those decisions, either car is going to be great. And I think you're gonna like it quite a bit. And so now that the federal incentive is going away, it might be finally time to pull the trigger. And if you've been wondering which of these cars to buy, well, hopefully this helped a little bit. They're actually still very, very similar cars, but either way, they really did do a good job on these updates.